Raining a little mud. JD's and Letterman, welcome back. We have something very special for you guys here today. LMT, Lewis Machine & Tools' very own entry into SOCCOM's MRGG-A trials. So the MRGG-A. That kind of rhymed. The mid-range gas gun. Guys, there are two different variants of these trials. So essentially SOCCOM, Special Operations Command, talking Green Berets, Delta, all those really cool high-speed guys. They sought out a new gun. They're saying, hey, we need something with a little more oomph, a little more stopping power, Hoss. So they all went to 45 AARP and everything was happy. Just kidding. Guys, 6.5 Creedmoor. Boomers, they are upset. They're mad. But I think what they are onto right now, guys, is something super special. So this is the A. There's two different variants. Again, the assault and the sniper. The sniper was a longer barrel, obviously, being like a 20 to 22 inch, and they had to shoot, again, a 6.5 Creed. The next was the A. The assault role, something more of a general purpose, dual role kind of combat carbine, if you will. So what that means is they were all 14.5 inches. 14.5 inches is the gold standard, in my opinion, of just the do-it-all barrel length. CQB, whether you're thinking training, whether you're thinking kind of semi-precision match shooting, a 14.5 has got you covered, whether it's in 5.56 or 6.5 Creed. And that's what's super rad about this. And SOCCOM has got the idea in their head that we need this too. But before we get any further, are you tired of paying full price for ammunition? Me too. Are you tired of supporting foreign manufactured ammunition? Me too. That's why I've paired up with Badlands Munitions Company. Guys, based here right in the United States, manufacturing match grade ammo 5.56, plinking ammo 5.56, home defense and self-defense 5.56. There's even 9mm for matches and self-defense. Guys, all made in the United States. The homies supporting the homies. 10% off using code 110SAS. That is the homies taking care of the homies with USA manufactured ammunition. So since the beginning of time, we're talking the dinosaurs. Just kidding. Let's think back to, say, World War II. Battle rifle. What does battle rifle actually mean? The M1 Garand. It was the first major and successful semi-automatic battle rifle. Now, what I find interesting about it all is that how the military has bounced back and forth between battle rifle, carbine, super small. So let's just start at the top. World War I, we've got huge M1903s, okay? Big, long, bolt action rifles. They said, hey, that's a little too long, but we still like the 30-06. Let's do the M1 Garand. You go from the M1 Garand, you're like, hey, that's pretty good. It works great. Let's do something a little smaller. In comes the M14. And they're like, hey, that's pretty good, but let's do something smaller. In comes the M16. And they're like, hey, that's pretty great. Fantastic, great. Let's do something smaller. In comes the M4. And they're like, yeah, M4, that's pretty great. Let's do something smaller. It's a 10.3, Mark 18. And then there's just it's all over the place. Back and forth, and smaller. And then they're like, hey, what if we brought back a large frame 308? And they're like, okay, let's try the SCAR. Let's try the M110 K1. They're like, oh, heck yeah, that's so great. That's so awesome. And they're like, never mind. Let's go back to the M4. And then they're like, hey, 6.5 Creed. Yeah. Hey, how you doing? Good looking. And they're like, yo, let's give that a shot. So the military has been back and forth on what we would call the battle rifle, if you will. I think everybody has a soft spot for guns that shoot a big, large cartridge, and that's much more effective than the 5.56. But when they start to carrying them, they're like, hey, this kind of sucks to carry. Every day is arm day when we take out a large frame gasser to the range. She's heavy. Now, what sounds so good. Essentially what they've been trying to do all of this time is bridge the gap between super heavy battle rifle and the M4. Now the M4 has been extremely prolific and extremely successful, not because it's the best and most effective cartridge in the 5.56, it's that it's the best blend of, dang, this thing is not too heavy, but it has just enough oomph. So we need to bridge the gap, is what they've said. And they think they found it with the 6.5 Creed. So bridging the gap. We need to bridge the gap between what the M4 does and what like an M110 can do. And with the 6.5 Creed, the dual roll combat carbine, I think we've finally done it. So let's talk about this rifle in particular. This is LMT's entry. Guys, there has been multiple people enter this trial. We're talking Knights Armament, we're talking Geisley, FN put in on this, Sig Sauer put in on this, LMT, of course, and even a few more that I can't think of off the top of my head. All of them are out. There's only 2 left, guys. LMT and Geisley. So, one of them 2 are going to win, and I'm going to tell you why I think the LMT has that one locked up. 1001, 1002. So I want to tell you why LMT is going to win this, in my opinion, of course, my own garbage trash opinion. So from 1980, LMT has been a family-ran company, and they've been manufacturing either parts or super high-end rifles for not only the United States military, but militaries across the globe. Estonia being one of the main users. Canada uses it, and so does the United States in some quantities. So, what I find super interesting about the LMT is their MRP. So it's a monolithic rail. What does that mean exactly, Sass? So, if you come in and take a look at this guy here, this is much different than anything that you see out there. You know, it's different than Geisley, it's different than Knights Armament, BCM, you name it. It doesn't have this monolithic rail system. What does that mean though? This means with just 2 screws here, you unscrew both of these guys here and the barrel is going to slide out. Now tell the class why that's cool, Bob. I'll tell you why it's cool. He doesn't seem to want to talk today, just a little shy. So we can change this barrel, guys, with taking out just 2 screws. Why is that important? Because I can go from this 14.5-inch 6.5 Creed gun all the way to, say, a 22-inch 6.5 Creed, a 13.5-inch 7.62, a 20-inch 7.62. You name it, if this bolt fits the cartridge, I can put a brand new barrel in here in a matter of just under a minute. And this is their patented system. That's one great reason why I think LMT should win this trial, strictly because we can change this gun from, again, 6.5 Creed all the way up to 7.62, depending on the mission. What they need to do, what the goal of the mission is, the goal of the operator using the rifle, they can tailor this rifle to exactly what they need to do. So, how does the gun actually shoot? What I find awesome about this gun is how smooth it shoots. This gun is exceptionally smooth to shoot. Now, when we're talking about a big, heavy gun, this gun, it's one of the heavier large frames that I've shot, and it's simply just because of the MRP system. But the benefits of the MRP, I think, outweigh the actual weight. So this thing, completely stripped, is just under 9 pounds. And that's not too bad. But yeah, it's kind of arm day when we're out here, you know, running this thing. But because of that little extra weight, it really makes the 6.5 Creed, to compare to something, a very spicy, hard shooting 5.56 round, I would say like a 10.3 that's grossly overgassed. You know, I'm looking at you, PSA. Yeah, I think that this thing shoots like a spicy 5.56. I can keep this thing on track. I have no problem swinging this gun like an AR-15. I can take it, I can point it. It's just a very nimble little rifle. And the fact that it packs a serious punch like the 6.5 Creed, especially over the 5.56, is a major plus. Now, you ask, what's the effective range on this gun? The effective range is actually something that might shock you. So, if you guys ever heard Dave Wilson, D. Wilson Manufacturing, we both had these guns right around the same time in SHOT Show of 2023. We took them out to a range in Vegas. Both of us hit steel at 1,200 yards. 1,200 yards with a 14.5-inch 6.5. Now, is that about the max effective distance? Yeah, I would say so. This gun, as it is here, I would call it about a 900-yard gun. Now, can you make good effective hits at 1,000 yards with this thing? Yeah, absolutely you can. In fact, done it multiple times. It's a good 1,000-yard gun, but I would say with the 6.5 Creed and the shorter barrel, 800 and 900 yards, but that is phenomenal, and that's miles ahead of the 5.56. Sure, with the 14.5, 5.56, can you make those hits? But let's talk about the energy. In fact, let's talk about 6.5 just in general versus 5.56 versus 308. So there is the never-ending debate. 308 versus 6.5, 308 versus 6.5. 6.5 is better. Stop and just look at the actual ballistics of this firearm. Compare this 14.5 to a 20-inch M110. A 14.5 shooting 140 grain pills versus a 7.62 gun shooting 175 grain pills. Ballistically, they're almost identical. And in fact, once you get out to a significant amount of yards, 600, 700, 800-ish, it starts to overtake and become a better, more effective pill than the 308. The 6.5 is an absolutely outstanding round. So what do we sacrifice with that? One, it's going to be cost. The 6.5 Creedmoor is a little bit more expensive to produce right now, but that can change once military contracts really start to take over and the Army starts adopting these things in a significant amount. So that's not a huge issue to the military because, hey, you and I are paying for it. To guys like you and me, that's where it's going to make the most difference. But I would say here in the near future, and even as of right now, you're seeing those prices get closer and closer together. I would say 7.62 is somewhere around 70 to 75 cents for like bulk training ammo, if you will. And 6.5 Creed's right around 75 to 80 cents around. There's some cases where it's a little bit higher and cases a little bit lower. But I would say right there for like training ammo, you're pretty close. So the difference in price is negligible to us civilians, but it's still a little bit and it needs to be mentioned. Now you compare this to the 5.56 gun. The difference is absolutely outstanding. You have a better TKO, you have more velocity, you have more energy. It's an all around, if you're talking about legitimate lethality and stopping power, the 6.5 Creed absolutely walks all over the 5.56. But again, we have the cost of weight, little bit of extra recoil, and cost. Now, what did it take to get into the MRGG-A trials? What exactly were they looking for out of this gun, and how did it need to perform? The first most interesting thing that I had found out of all of the guns, and it was a requirement, to have a forward assist. Eugene Stoner's probably rolling over in his grave because forward assist was not his thing. I think that's interesting because there's hardly any large frame gassers on the market that have a forward assist. Think Knight's Armament, think LMT. Neither of those two from the factory have one. HK doesn't even have one. I think that's super interesting that on this gun in particular, they had to have the forward assist. One of the very few times that I've actually really needed a forward assist, it's been on a large frame gasser. So I don't hate it. In fact, I kind of enjoy it. It makes this gun just a little bit better, if you will. Sometimes these things, they get gunked up just a little bit faster than a regular AR-15, and the bolt just gets a little sluggish. When you put in a fresh mag, pop it home, sometimes they like to get a little stuck right there. That's okay, just give them a little love tap, and you're gonna send it home. Let's talk about accuracy of these guns. They really wanted these things to be absolute laser beams. They even had their own ammo drawn up for it in the beginning, and it's changed so many times over the past, since about 2018, 2019, when these trials started. Now, the first cartridge they wanted to use, they said, hey, the 14.5s, they're shorter. Obviously, they're gonna suffer from muzzle velocity. What do we need to do? We need to get a lighter pill. What they did was a 103 grain cartridge, 103 grain 6.5 Creedmoor cartridge. I find that mad interesting because that's light and that's fast. That is super fast, but the sniper variant wasn't going to shoot that same cartridge. And it doesn't make sense from a logistics standpoint to have two different 6.5 Creed pills for basically the same platform and the same dudes who are doing the same job. It just doesn't make a ton of sense from a logistics standpoint to have different variations. So it's changed a bit over the years. And in fact, the manufacturers have been battling against this change in cartridge. It's happened multiple times. What they have found is the 140 grain Berger VLD hybrids. Those are pretty much the gold standard for these 6.5 gas guns. They shoot the flattest, they have the highest ballistic coefficient, and the most consistent. Berger, they just make awesome bullets. There is no ifs and buts about it. That's what a lot of these guns are designed around. It's changed. It's gone from like 130s, 103 grains, and I believe now it's at that 140. So that's what we've been shooting a lot of here, is the Berger VLD hybrids. It is an awesome, awesome bullet. And these guns shoot it so well. This gun is an absolute laser beam. We're talking at 400 yards. You've got about 1.6 to 1.8 mil of hold. That's outstanding. That's very, very good out of a 14.5 inch. Not to mention, we still have some very effective stopping power with that energy. Now, speaking of accuracy requirements, they wanted these guns to be half-minute guns. Of course, if they can be, but that's the goal. They wanted those things half-minute guns between 5,000 rounds. They wanted them to be 1 MOA guns around the 10,000 round mark. Then they needed them to be 1.5 MOA at 15,000 rounds between the test rifles. That's a lot. One thing I can say about 6.5 Creed is that, yeah, they burn barrels just a little bit faster than your 5.56 or 308. And that's strictly because of the extra pressure. They just go faster, and there's no way around it. Now, all of these new barrels, they have very special materials that they're making these barrels out of that aren't your typical run-of-the-mill pipes. Things like stellite and other different really cool super science rocket materials and stuff. I don't know. I'm not a science rocketist, guys. I'm sorry. I don't know the lingo. But these barrels, they are lasting a little bit longer than your typical 6.5. But, guys, 6.5, there's no way around it. Unfortunately, they're just going to burn barrels. You would see a typical life expectancy of this barrel, depending on how you shoot it, right around the 5,000 round mark, plus or minus 500 rounds. Now, if you shoot it like me, probably, I don't know, this barrel's probably already shot out. Who knows? Don't be a goober like me and shoot your 6.5 Creedmoor like it's an AR-15, because you're going to be replacing barrels more often. Whatever. The risk I took was calculated. Brother, am I bad at math? So the accuracy requirements are kind of crazy. And just, to be quite frank, a little unrealistic, if you will. But, of course, it's SOCCOM. They want the very, very best. The S variant, that's the sniper variant, has actually already been picked. And I find that super interesting because the S variant is just a 22-inch 6.5 Creedmoor. So we're talking the same gun, just a little bit longer barrel. That's already been picked. That's a real deal contract. Geisley has won that contract. But the A variant, it's still up in the air. It's between Geisley and LMT. A lot of it has come down to, what exactly do we want out of this gun? Do we want just a heavy-hitting assault rifle, or do we want the dual-role combat carbine? Something that can reach out and touch 800 yards, but also go and kick down these doors. And it's just been held to a higher level of scrutiny, and they still haven't figured it out. Not to mention, they haven't decided fully on what ammo they're going to use. I would imagine what's going to end up happening is they're going to go with the same ammo that the MRGG-S uses, and that's 140 grain Berger VLD hybrid. I think that's just going to be the best bet, logistically speaking, and of course accuracy and performance speaking. You don't necessarily need a lighter bullet out of this big heavy gun, if you will, just because it's short. It's still going to be effective with your 140 grain bullet. It's just not going to go as fast, but still have more energy and more lethality downrange than your 5.56. So it's hard to say what the actual fate of the MRGG-A trials is going to be. I think SOCCOM has got it dialed in, and I think they actually want the rifle. It just has to match these certain requirements. And I think LMT is there. In fact, I'm a huge proponent of LMT. These guns are phenomenally made. And these guns are a little bit more affordable than a lot of the other offerings on the market. These guns, they come in a little bit cheaper, which is great for civilians like you and me, because hey, who doesn't want to get a great gun for less money? Yeah, me too. Sounds like a great gig. Who's going to win? Guys, I wish I had that insider information. Unfortunately, I don't. But I think we've got a home run here. Now, whether or not this gun wins that contract, I don't really care, because this gun is freaking sweet. This gun's awesome. It is a phenomenal gun, and it can do it all. If you want to hunt with it, you can. If you want to target shoot with it and shoot matches with it, you can. If you want to do a little bit of the cool guy CQB or whatever you guys do in your mother's basement, talking about me, it can do that too. It's the pinnacle of dual role carbine, and LMT absolutely knocked it out of the park on this. I'm wishing them the best. So, guys, we have a wrap. Until next time, you say it with me. Run your gun, not your mouth. We'll catch you next time. How's that ammo?